Is Dennis Grosel the answer for Boston College for the 2021 season? We're going to talk all about this and much more on today's Locked On Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. I am the editor and publisher of bcbulletin.com. Thank you all who follow. On today's show, he's been the most polarizing figure in Boston College sports since Quentin Porter. We're going to talk about Dennis Grosel and whether he should continue being the quarterback for Boston College. In a moment, we'll have Mitch Wolf, who will join and talk about the ins and outs of how easy it is to change a quarterback. But let's look at where Boston College's quarterback situation is right now. Now, if you watched Saturday's game, you saw a quarterback, Dennis Grosel, who struggled in all phases of the game. He couldn't hit the long passes. There were many passes to Zay Flowers that were wide open, and he couldn't hit them. That was game-changing. And for those of you out there that were like, man, if Grosel wasn't out there, we'd win this game. Well, yes and no. And so we'll look at, what Grosel can do. So Grosel is a backup quarterback. And to be fair, he going into the season, if you listen to me before Jurkovec got hurt, I said Dennis Grosel is the best backup quarterback in the ACC. And with what Jeff Hafley had, I think that's still true. If you look in the world of college sports, other than blue bloods, because blue blood teams like Clemson, like Oklahoma, Ohio State, Georgia, those schools, they can get 4 and 5 stars as their backups. Teams like Boston College, Wake Forest, UVA, Duke, Michigan State, they're not going to be able to get elite backups. So when you get a guy like Dennis Grosel, a guy who's played for Boston College as a starter for 2 seasons, you feel good about what he can do for you. You feel good that he can do what you can do. And you are not going to, when you have a guy like Grosel, your thought may be, well, if Jurkovec goes down, he was hurt twice last year, why can't you get another recruit from either, a true freshman or a transfer? Now, let me break this down, both of you. So, a transfer, first of all, right? Just take out Jurkovec's injury at this point. If you are a elite recruit, say you're a guy like at Jurkovec's level 2 years ago, are you going to go to a situation like Boston College where there's a quarterback already in place heading into the 2021 season? You may be a fan of going, yeah, but you can battle for him and you can do it. Take your fandom out of this. Think as a player. If you are Will Levis, who is a good recruit that transferred, is he going to go to Boston College? Absolutely not. Because he knows Phil Jurkovec's going to be the starter. And so heading into this season, you already know that Dennis Grosel is probably going to be as good as you're going to get, because you're not going to get transfers. You're not going to, because A, they're not going to want to play here, and B, what message does that send to the locker room? You have Dennis Grosel, a guy who threw for 520 yards against UVA, sitting on your bench, and you're going to go in and bring somebody else in? A guy who's waited his turn. He could have transferred. And you're going to bring in somebody else? Yeah, again, as a fan, you may go, oh yeah, well, he should grow bigger skin. Get your fandom out of this. Think of as a player. Think of what they think. Think of, Jalen Cheek, the backup cornerback right now. If he thinks, oh, next year I've been working really hard, but they're just going to bring in a transfer to just take my spot. Maybe I'm just going to go someplace else and play. You got to think about the culture in the locker room when you make a decision to bypass Dennis Grosel to get somebody else in here when Grosel hadn't done anything wrong. So the preseason stuff doesn't make any sense because you had your answer for a backup right there. You're not going to get better than Dennis Grosel. Now, the true freshman situation, that's a bit bigger conversation, right? So Hafley's been at Boston College for about 18 months, right? He came in about January last year. It's a little bit more than 18 months. But he's had a recruiting class and a half, right? So last year, he came in and he brought Matt Reeve from St. Xavier in Ohio, a kid who didn't really have many Power 5 offers, and he didn't do much on the recruiting trail. Nice kid to bring in late in a recruiting class, but he's definitely not Spencer Rattler, right? He's not a true freshman you can bring in and just like, boom, he's going to play. So he's going to take some time. He's a developmental player, and that's what Boston College is made of. So he's a developmental player. Then this is the name I hear over and over and over again. Emmet Moread, who comes in 2021. He comes in the spring of this year. He did not play a senior season. I talked to his coaches, and they were like, he's good, but he's going to take some time to develop. He's a little raw. That is what Emmet Moread is. You do not throw a true freshman who was fifth on the depth chart going into this season onto the roster. Okay? He's going to take some time, so you got to give him some chance, right? Daelen Menard, you know what? If you want to argue that Daelen Menard should be out there, I'm not going to argue with you because he could be. He could be. He definitely could be a chance. He could definitely be it. But think about this as well, right? So, Grosel, he's played like 7 or 8 games since 2019. Menard has not started since he was a junior at his college at Chaminade. He got hurt his senior year and hasn't played since. So if you're going to play Daelen Menard, who is going to be a senior next year, and then definitely be behind Jurkovec and whoever else they have, you're not going to develop him. You don't need to develop Daelen Menard, okay? So you're stuck with Grosel. What do you do? What do you do with Grosel? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. PrizePicks is the leader in college sports daily fantasy. They offer more college football props than anyone in the world and offer all the star players of the Power 5 as well as the major players you may not have heard of. They can offer every prop you can think of, from sacks to touchdowns to interceptions. You just pick 2 players or up to 5 in the over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry, and it's just you versus the projected numbers. They allow mixed sports, so you could pick Chris Sale and LeBron James. Using the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play, entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Don't hesitate to check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code LOCKEDON to receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Now, are you in the process of doing work on your car? Why spend 30, 50, or 70% more when you could go to rockauto.com and save today? Rock Auto is a family business that have been serving auto part customers for over 20 years. They have reliably low prices for every customer. And when you go to rockauto.com, you can find everything you need on their easy-to-use website, including brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, or even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website and find the solutions to all your auto parts needs. And when you do, make sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here. We're dissecting still the aftermath of Saturday's loss to NC State. And as we talked about on Monday, one of the biggest topics that came out of that game was the play of Dennis Grosel. And on Monday's episode, I talked with Mitch Wolf a little bit about the play of Grosel and what the internet's reaction has been. And I get it. So I want to talk about replacing a quarterback, because I think a lot of people have misnomers about how easy it is. Like, I feel like people have played Madden so much that it's like, oh, I just, I hit A and then that guy goes in and he's automatically as good as the other guy that was just in. So Mitch, we're here to talk about backups. This is going to be a fun conversation, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be talking about this.
I have to, though, because this is all anyone at BC, this is a podcast that talks about the daily BC news, and this is like the big BC news right now. So we're going to get into it. So Grosel's struggling, and I get the impression that people just want him gone. Now, Mitch, talk about like what that would entail. Like, what would that look like if Hafley was to just say, okay, next guy up, go ahead.
So, the big thing we've talked about over the past few weeks is that when you put in Grosel, the offense is limited basically by his physical ability. The problem if you put in another backup like Daelen Menard or a freshman like Emmet Moread is that the playbook shrinks even further just because they have not practiced those plays and they don't know how to execute them. And this is something we were talking about earlier is that they also, even if they did learn how to execute them, they haven't been executing them with the guys who are starters. So, if you put in Menard or Morehead, like they're not practicing with the ones, they're not throwing to Zay Flowers, not throwing to Jalen Gill, they're throwing to Dante Reynolds, Lewis Bond, whatever Robert Kraft's grandson on the team, whoever that is.
Yep.
Yeah, so they don't have that chemistry. And like, I totally understand, Grosel is still missing receivers. Like he doesn't have as much chemistry with Zay Flowers as Phil did for sure. But, he was good. They had some chemistry in the Clemson game. He just missed on some of those deep throws. And I think that if, again, I'm a broken record here, but I think that if they, stop asking him to throw the ball as deep down the field as he wants to, or thinks he has to, I think that'll help a lot. And the other thing that goes beyond just in terms of schematics or, play style or whatever, and I said this a few weeks ago, is that I really feel that if Hafley decides to bench Grosel, I think that sends a really bad message to the team, because this is a guy who was a former walk-on. He stuck it out. He didn't transfer when Phil won the job. He's like, I'm going to be the backup. I'm going to be here. I'm going to support this team. I love my guys. I love everybody here. I love the school. I want to play for this school and be with you. And I think the team knows that what's going wrong is not really Grosel's fault. So if you think about the Clemson game, a lot of the issues were on the offensive line because they didn't know how to handle the crowd. And, Hafley talked about trying to simulate that. That's just incredibly hard to simulate, especially for a relatively new head coach after coming off a COVID year. Like and it showed against NC State, tons of drops, not really Grosel's fault. Most of those were pretty on target. And even some of the ones that weren't just blatant drops, like think about the throw to CJ Lewis that got punched out by the defensive back, the near touchdown to Trey Berry that got punched out, the contested throw to Zay Flowers that got broken up. At some point, sometimes the receivers do need to make plays, but other times, like they're just making mistakes. Like Jaden Williams had a bunch of drops, and that's not on Grosel. And like I said, I think that when the chips are down for him, we saw this in the UVA game. He's trying to make these plays and come back, and he sometimes leads to turnovers. And that, he threw for 520 yards, but he also had like 5 turnovers. So you take some good with the bad. But anyways, I think that if they benched him, it would send a bad message to the team. I think it could fracture the locker room, and I think Hafley could lose the locker room because Grosel's play is not so bad that it's preventing this team from losing games. I know if you just look at it very bird's eye view level, okay, he's not playing great and the team is losing games X, or, A is to B is X is to Y, whatever, you should bench him. I really don't think that's the case. I think that the team knows that he is trying his best. He's doing what he's being asked to do. And if you put in a guy that doesn't really know the offense as well, and I mean, I feel like we can agree that probably Daelen Menard has some of the same physical limitations, and a guy like Emmet Moread, I may have, he probably has like more of a Phil in terms of play style, but he's a true freshman who hasn't taken a snap, at college, and he's just not going to have the mental capacity, but like the mental processing ability to go out there and win college football games.
And I put this segment together with Mitch on purpose because I don't want us to come across as Dennis Grosel stands, as guys that are just like endlessly defending him, because the truth is he hasn't been great. But I can also look at knowing, based off of what I've seen, based off of practices I've been to, watching the spring game, knowing just the depth of this team, and based off I'm talking about the coaching staff here too. What they've said, Dennis Grosel is the best quarterback on this roster. Whether you like it or not, it doesn't, what you think doesn't change that. Okay. Like, I don't, I'd hope that maybe there'd be a quarterback that would be the next Phil Jurkovec. But okay, first of all, Daelen Menard, he could be. He's one guy I would agree with you. I'm not opposed to seeing what he could do at points. But as Mitch said, like, you could lose the locker room if you bench Grosel for him. Now, Matt Weave and Emmet Moread are raw. They are raw. And they are fourth and fifth string for a reason. Emmet Moread is a fifth string quarterback right now, going into the season. He's fourth string right now. He did not play his senior year in high school. He came to BC 6 months ago. He probably is not ready. So just throwing him out there, A, is not going to do anything. And B, you're risking ruining his psyche because he's not ready. He's probably not ready for it. So I don't know how else to say this.
I mean, like you put it perfectly. Like you could break the locker room by taking Grosel out, and you could theoretically break a young player by putting him in a position that he really can't succeed in. And, we see a lot of programs now, they're willing to put in their true freshman quarterbacks, like Clemson was with Trevor Lawrence, like Alabama was with Tua, and Jalen Hurts for that matter. And I mean, I think we all know this, but BC just isn't recruiting those type of guys who are, who all of them have gone on to be NFL quarterbacks. And, some of them have had more success than others, but that's a whole different thing. Like Emmet Moread was a high 3-star recruit. That usually those guys aren't starting as true freshmen. I think back to like when I went to the spring games when I was in college and I saw guys like Anthony Brown and Sam Johnson play as true freshmen. And in the spring game, they were making tons of terrible mistakes. And I mean, if you put those guys in at that time against live bullets, against live competition in the ACC, it's going to go worse than what Grosel is doing right now. I can promise you that.
And I get your frustrations, folks. I do. Just, you have to be patient with the quarterback situation too, because Reeve came in last year. Morehead came in this year. They're both young. And I hate to say it for those folks that are yelling at me already that Peter Delaporte is going to be the next best thing. He's a developmental guy too. He's going to need a couple years. So these guys they don't come to Boston College just ready, and just throwing them out there isn't going to improve their this isn't a game of Madden. I keep saying this, where at the end of the season, their stats go up +6 because they played in a couple games. It doesn't work like that. Like, they're not ready yet. You have to go with what you have. And again, get mad at me all you want. And I get it. Like I got people still yelling at me about this. Hafley said it as much on Sunday's press conference. He said, I'm not going to do anything crazy. So he's basically, you read between the lines. What else is he going to talk about? He's talking about his quarterback. He's not going to go out there and bench Dennis Grosel. So I get your frustrations, but we have 6 more games left. You're going to be getting a healthy dosage of Dennis Grosel, barring something weird.
And listen, like if there are blowout games, if let's say like the next 2 weeks, BC goes on the road and just, lights up Louisville and Syracuse, and we get to the fourth quarter and it's a 3 or 4 score game, put them in. Cause I love this new redshirt rule where you can get guys into up to 4 games and just get them some reps. By all means, please do that. Cause those reps, they're good to have. They won't really affect the game, but you can at least experience live football and everything, but not as a starter. And, this is going to be lofty, but there was another quarterback at BC who redshirted his freshman year and was named the starter only because of an injury. And in his sophomore year, he wasn't named the starter initially. That was Matt Ryan. He didn't become the true and blue full-time starter until 2006, which is his 3rd year in the program. So, again, like you were saying, BC does not get these, high 4 or 5-star guys that are ready to come in and compete immediately at college level. And that's just because those guys are super rare. Like guys like Justin Fields, I'll say he should have been the starter at Georgia, but Kirby Smart had this weird loyal Jake Fromm. We saw Trevor Lawrence come in and take the job. Jalen Hurts did the same thing, and there were multiple 5-star prospects ahead of him. BC does not have that luxury right now, and that's fine. I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate here, and I get it. Like there are times where Grosel just doesn't make accurate throws. It's mostly deep down the field. But there are some other ones where it just misses. And he's like a redshirt senior guy. Like he should be making these throws more consistently. I'll stipulate to all of that. But again, I think that if you put in this other quarterback, I'll just go back to a schematic football, specifically on-field football thing. You're going to limit what the offense can do. And if you're further limiting this passing game by putting in a guy who can't execute the whole offense, that's going to affect the run game, and it's just going to completely neuter the entire offense.
Yep. Like, just think of like, if you're watching a game, right? Like, think of like good quarterbacks. Like Tom Brady sits there and he points out, he points out blitzes. He points out where to points out his blocking, all that kind of stuff. You know, Dennis Grosel does pieces of that too. If you throw Emmet Moread out there, he has no clue how to do that yet. He's not there yet. And that's a piece that younger quarterbacks have to learn. And unless you're ready to nuke this entire season to say, hey, let's get a freshman out there, then that's not really worthwhile. And I had another point to bring up too. As we talk about developmental quarterbacks, I think I get the sense that maybe folks are getting a little spoiled, thinking that like not really understanding the concept of what Phil Jurkovec went through before he got here. Cause I think people are thinking like, oh, Phil Jurkovec just came here and he played immediately and he was great. He's a blue chip, and B, he was at Notre Dame for a couple of years, learning systems and learning all that under Ian Book and Brian Kelly. So don't use him as a reference point. I don't think that's a fair thing.
Yeah. And like when he went to Notre Dame, like, and this is kind of another Justin Fields, Jake Fromm situation, is like, he probably had more talent than Ian Book because Ian Book's bad. But I think Brian Kelly said, like, this guy is our future. Like, he's like the best player I've ever recruited. And, you know, Phil was able to get in some games after his redshirt year in garbage time. And again, like I was saying, those reps are extremely important, but they're important in the sense that because the game doesn't matter, but you can still come in and just learn, okay, like this is how I have to react in certain situations. This is how I'm understanding the defense. You know, you're getting help from all the coaching staff, and that's great for play. And so, you know, Phil comes here as a redshirt sophomore, and he's played a handful of games. He knows what he's doing, and even he needs some more seasoning. You know, I think about like when Anthony Brown was the starter back in 2017. Like he came out, and you know, I mean, Anthony Brown's basically still the same player that he was in 2017, 4 or 5 years down the road. But you know, there's a lot of things that he was missing just because he was so young and didn't have that experience. And yeah, the guys that people might be clamoring for at this point, you know, that I think you'd kind of be seeing that all over again. The other thing is, and we said this yesterday, like, again, like I was saying, like this game is not as disastrous as the final score indicates. It was a really close game at halftime. Then again, things snowballed. That's kind of on Hafley. Blah, blah, we talked about that. But this season is not over. Like there are winnable games ahead of the team. The team is sitting at 4-2. I still think 8-4 is on the table. I mean, if it's 7-5, I will definitely be disappointed, but it's possible. But you know, I think there's a good chance this team finishes with its best record since, you know, before Frank Spaziani was even here.
Yep. I totally agree with you, Mitch. Well, Mitch, thank you for joining me. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Mitchell T. Wolfe, WOLFE on Twitter. In addition to my football content, the new season of The Bachelorette will be starting on Tuesday. So if you're into that, you can follow me there. I usually do live tweets of those episodes. And, you know, that's kind of my non-football hobby that I enjoy doing.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Mitch. And we'll be back with more in just a moment.